Hi, and welcome to Shot of Justice. The Azalea Club, A Story of Sweet Revenge. Part 1, The Stain. The lipstick wasn't mine. That simple, glaring fact hit Eleanor Winthrop with the force of a dropped skillet, right there in the sterile quiet of her laundry room. It wasn't the soft rose she favored, nor the sheer berry gloss for Sundays. This was fire engine red, bold, brazen, the kind a woman wears when she's not planning on staying anonymous. It blazed like a warning flare on the crisp white cuff of Richard's best dress shirt, the one he'd worn to the Chamber of Commerce dinner last Friday. He'd tossed it carelessly into the hamper, buried beneath khakis and golf polos, a careless camouflage. Eleanor's breath hitched. Her knuckles, gripping the edge of the stainless steel sink, turned white. 58 years old, 38 years married to Richard Winthrop III, pillar of Willow Creek, South Carolina, retired bank manager and champion golfer at the exclusive Magnolia Bluffs Country Club. And suddenly the meticulously ordered world of her golden years felt like cheap plaster crumbling around her. Old ladies don't wear fire engine red, a voice sharp and unfamiliar hissed in her mind. She stared at the stain. It looked obscene, accusatory, like blood on a handkerchief. Memories, sharp and unwelcome, flooded in, Richard working late more often lately. Board meetings, Ellie. You know how it is. Even though he'd been retired for 2 years, the new phone, password protected, clutched possessively. His sudden, intense interest in upgrading his golf wardrobe. Got to look the part for the seniors' tournament, darling. The faint, lingering whiffs of an unfamiliar, cloyingly sweet perfume when he leaned in for his dutiful peck on the cheek. She dismissed it as imagination, menopause-induced paranoia, the silly insecurities of a woman whose reflection showed more silver than brown and whose waistline had softened despite her best efforts. She'd poured her energy into her garden club, volunteering at the library, perfecting her pecan pie recipe, the pursuits of a respectable Willow Creek matron. But this was evidence. Physical, undeniable proof that Richard Winthrop was lying. That the man she'd built her life around, raised 2 children with, planned a quiet, comfortable retirement with, was betraying her. The humiliation was a physical ache, a hot flush creeping up her neck, warring with a chilling numbness spreading from her core. She didn't confront him immediately. Eleanor Winthrop wasn't a hysteric. She was methodical, practical, raised to keep a clean house and a cleaner reputation. Rage, cold and hard as river stone, settled into her bones, displacing the initial shock. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was a demolition of everything she'd trusted. Sweet revenge, the phrase echoed in the hollow space left by her crumbling trust. It wasn't a plan yet, just a dark, comforting whisper. She carefully placed the shirt back in the hamper, exactly as she'd found it. Then she went to her prized azalea bushes, the ones lining the walkway, vibrant fuchsias and corals just beginning to bloom. She dead-headed spent blossoms with savage precision, her movements sharp, rhythmic. Each snap of a stem was a tiny release. Part 2. Unearthing Roots. The investigation began quietly. Eleanor became a silent detective in her own home. She noted Richard's absences with new scrutiny. Tuesday afternoons, supposedly at the driving range. Saturday mornings, early tee-off with the boys, but returning suspiciously fresh, smelling faintly of that same sweet perfume and something else. Chlorine? She checked their joint bank statements online, something she usually left to Richard. Discreet charges appeared. The Palisades Hotel downtown, an expensive boutique lingerie shop called Silk Secrets, lavish dinners at La Mer, a restaurant far too romantic and pricey for Richard's usual meat and potatoes tastes. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she cross-referenced dates. The lingerie purchase coincided with their anniversary, an anniversary he'd spent working late, bringing her wilted supermarket flowers the next day. The hotel charges matched his board meetings. La Mer bookings aligned with his golf weekends. One rainy Thursday, fueled by a courage born of sheer fury, she followed him. He left the house at 1 p.m., dressed not in golf attire but in smart slacks and a cashmere sweater she'd never seen before. He drove not towards Magnolia Bluffs, but towards the newer, flashier part of town. Eleanor tailed him at a discreet distance, her sensible Buick feeling suddenly conspicuous. He pulled into the gated community of Riverbend Estates. Her stomach clenched. Expensive, exclusive, new money. Everything Richard claimed to disdain, though he'd always coveted it. She waited, parked under a dripping willow tree down the block. 40 minutes later, he emerged, not alone. On his arm was a woman, younger, late 40s, maybe early 50s, sleek, shoulder-length blonde hair, dressed in expensive, tight-fitting athleisure. She laughed, tossing her hair back, and leaned into Richard as he opened the passenger door of his Lexus for her. Fire engine red lips, undoubtedly. Eleanor recognized the bold shade, the confident tilt of her head. They drove off, probably to lunch, or back to her house. The woman's name came surprisingly easily, a little discreet gossip carefully steered during the next garden club meeting. "Oh, I saw the most stylish woman at the Palisades lobby last week. Blonde, fabulous red lips." Yielded results. Monica Carlyle, recently divorced, moved to Willow Creek from Atlanta. Husband was some big-shot developer who'd left her comfortably well off, according to Brenda Higgins, who knew everything. Monica was apparently very involved at Magnolia Bluffs, particularly in the social events. Richard's domain. The picture was complete, crushingly, painfully complete. Richard was funding a lavish affair with a younger, flashier woman, using the money Eleanor had meticulously saved, budgeted, and invested alongside him for decades. Her money. The money from selling her mother's modest house. The money from her own part-time job at the library before the kids were born, their joint retirement fund. The cold rage solidified into a diamond-hard core. Revenge wasn't just desirable, it was necessary, essential for survival. But Eleanor Winthrop wouldn't throw plates or slash tires. Her revenge would be colder, more elegant, more devastating. It would strike at what Richard valued most, his reputation, his comfort, and his precious golfing status. Part 3. The Seeds of Strategy. Eleanor needed an ally. She chose Carol Henderson, her best friend since 3rd grade. Carol, a widow for 5 years, ran the town's best and only independent bookstore, the Quirky Quill. She was sharp, irreverent, and possessed a deep, abiding dislike for Richard Winthrop's pompousness. Over strong tea and Carol's infamous lemon bars in the bookstore's back room, Eleanor laid it bare. The lipstick, the charges, Monica, Riverbend Estates. She showed Carol the bank statements, her hands trembling only slightly. Carol didn't gasp, she snorted. "That slimy, self-important, toupee-wearing toad." She slammed her teacup down. "I knew it. I always knew he wasn't half the man he pretended to be. Poor Ellie. What a monumental jerk." Her eyes, behind her cat-eye glasses, glittered with righteous fury. "Okay, honey. Wallow for exactly 5 more minutes. Then we plan. How do we ruin him?" Eleanor took a deep, steadying breath. "Not ruin. Not exactly. Reclaim. Rebalance. I want what's mine, and I want him to feel exposed, humiliated, the way I felt finding that lipstick, but quietly, legally, permanently." They talked for hours. Carol, knowing everyone in town, provided crucial insights. Richard's vanity. His obsession with Magnolia Bluffs, particularly the prestigious Azalea Invitational tournament he chaired every spring. His terror of financial insecurity, masked by his bluster. His reliance on Eleanor's invisible management of their lives. "He thinks you're just part of the furniture, Ellie," Carol said bluntly. "Comfortable, reliable, dull. He has no idea who you really are. Time to show him." The plan began to take shape. It hinged on three things: money, the golf club, and Monica Carlyle. First, Eleanor needed the best lawyer in the state, not just Willow Creek. Carol knew a pitbull in Charleston, Lydia Vance, known for eviscerating dishonest spouses with surgical precision. Eleanor met Lydia discreetly. The evidence was overwhelming. Lydia's smile was thin and predatory. "Leave it to me, Mrs. Winthrop. We'll freeze assets, demand full forensic accounting. He won't know what hit him, but he'll feel it in his wallet. Permanently." Second, Magnolia Bluffs, Richard's kingdom. His entire social identity revolved around it. Eleanor knew its workings intimately. The endless committee meetings Richard attended, the fundraising drives, the intricate social hierarchies. Richard chaired the Course Enhancement Fund. It was his pet project, his legacy, raising money for a new irrigation system and expanded practice greens. He poured enormous energy into it, schmoozing wealthy members, hosting donor dinners. The fund currently held nearly $200,000 in donations, earmarked and sitting in a club account, awaiting final vendor selection, which Richard, as chair, heavily influenced. Eleanor's research, aided by Carol's network, revealed a crucial detail. Richard had been pressuring the club treasurer to move the funds to a different account, one he claimed offered better interest rates for the club. Lydia's private investigator, hired discreetly, found something more interesting. The recommended bank was owned by a development group with ties to Monica Carlyle's ex-husband. It smelled like a kickback scheme, or, at the very least, Richard's steering business towards Monica's world. This was the lever. Part 4. The careful pruning. Eleanor initiated the divorce. She had Lydia serve Richard at Magnolia Bluffs, right after he'd sunk a tricky putt on the 18th green. The look on his face, described gleefully by Carol's source, a caddy with excellent hearing, was reportedly priceless, a mixture of shock, fury, and dawning terror as he realized his carefully constructed image was under attack. He stormed home, florid-faced. "What is the meaning of this, Eleanor? This outrage, serving me papers at the club. Have you lost your mind?" Eleanor sat calmly in her favorite armchair, knitting. Not her usual soothing pastels, but a bold, blood-red yarn. "The lipstick wasn't mine, Richard," she said, her voice unnervingly level. "Fire engine red, on your cuff. From the chamber dinner. Monica Carlyle has such distinctive taste, doesn't she? Riverbend Estates is lovely this time of year. Very chlorine-scented." Richard blanched. His bluster faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. This is nonsense. Slander." "Is it?" Lydia Vance seems to think otherwise. She's very interested in the Palisades charges and silk secrets and the 1,500 dinner at La Mer last month, on our anniversary. She kept knitting, the needles clicking a steady, menacing rhythm. She's also fascinated by the Course Enhancement Fund, that account transfer you've been pushing. To First Regional, owned by Carlyle Development Group, I believe. Monica's ex-husband's company? How terribly coincidental. Richard's face went from red to ashen. That's club business, completely above board. You have no right." "I have every right, Richard," Eleanor interrupted, finally looking up. Her eyes, usually warm and placid, were chips of ice. "I have the right to half of everything. Lydia will ensure I get it. Every penny you spent on Monica, consider it in advance. Now get out. Lydia has already filed for exclusive use of the marital home. You'll be hearing from her about temporary support. I suggest you find a hotel, or maybe Monica has a spare room." Richard spluttered, threatened, pleaded. He called her names: bitter, vindictive, crazy. He tried charm, a ghost of the man she'd once loved. "Ellie, darling, it was a mistake, a stupid midlife crisis. It meant nothing. You're my wife." "It meant nothing?" Eleanor repeated softly. The click of the needle stopped. "It meant 38 years of my life were a lie you were living quite comfortably. It meant my trust was worthless. It meant you valued cheap thrills over everything we built. Get out." He left, slamming the door. The house felt instantly lighter. Eleanor put down the knitting. Her hands shook, but a fierce, unfamiliar sense of power surged through her. Round 1 to Eleanor. Part 5. Blooming in the shadows. The divorce proceedings were brutal, but Lydia Vance was worth every penny. Richard fought dirty, trying to hide assets, smear Eleanor as unstable and spendthrift. But Lydia's forensic accountant unearthed everything: the hidden credit card for Monica, the cash withdrawals, the attempt to secure a second mortgage on their vacation cottage without Eleanor's knowledge. The judge was not amused. Richard was ordered to pay significant temporary alimony and cover all legal fees. He was forced to move into a modest apartment downtown, a far cry from his colonial mansion on Oak Street. Monica Carlyle, faced with the implosion of her sugar daddy arrangement and the sudden evaporation of Richard's funds, now frozen and scrutinized, dropped him like a hot potato. Gossip, expertly curated by Carol through her bookstore network and the garden club Grapevine, painted Monica as the predatory homewrecker and Richard as the foolish, embezzling cad. His reputation at Magnolia Bluffs, once sterling, began to tarnish rapidly. Whispers followed him. The course enhancement fund transfer was put on indefinite hold by a nervous board. His chairmanship hung by a thread. But Eleanor wasn't done. Reclaiming her financial security was essential, but the true, sweet revenge was still unfolding. She focused on the Azalea Invitational. It was Richard's baby, his annual moment in the sun. He organized everything: sponsors, player pairings, the lavish gala dinner. His entire social calendar revolved around it. Using her decades of experience running church bazaars and garden club fundraisers, Eleanor, through subtle channels, began to sow discord. She let it slip to Carol, who let it slip to Brenda Higgins, that Richard's financial troubles might be impacting his ability to secure the usual top-shelf liquor sponsor for the gala. She casually mentioned to the wife of the club president, during a library volunteer shift, how concerned she was that Richard seemed distracted lately, what with all his personal difficulties, and wouldn't that be a shame if the Invitational suffered? She planted seeds of doubt about his competence, his focus, his reliability. Simultaneously, she started her own project. Quietly, she poured her energy and a small advance from her soon-to-be secured settlement into her true passion, her garden. Specifically, her azaleas. She'd always had a gift, but now she cultivated them with fierce devotion, propagating rare varieties, creating stunning hybrid colors. She documented everything meticulously. It was therapy, a symbol of her own resilience and growth. Part 6. The Invitational. The week of the Azalea Invitational arrived. Tension crackled at Magnolia Bluffs. Richard looked haggard, trying desperately to project his usual confident bluster, but the strain showed. The whispers were louder. Monica Carlyle was conspicuously absent. The gala dinner sponsor had downgraded to a cheaper brand, fueling the gossip Eleanor had started. The tournament itself proceeded, but Richard's usual jovial hosting felt forced. He flubbed introductions. He snapped at a waiter. The atmosphere was off. The climax was the gala dinner. always held in the grand ballroom overlooking the 18th green. Richard, as chair, was expected to give a speech thanking sponsors, celebrating the players, and announcing the total raised for the Course Enhancement Fund. He took the podium, adjusting his tie, forcing a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice lacking its usual resonance. "What a magnificent tournament! Truly a testament to the spirit of Magnolia Bluffs." He droned on. The audience shifted restlessly. Then, just as he was about to announce the fundraising total, the ballroom doors opened. Eleanor Winthrop stood there. Gasps rippled through the room. She hadn't been seen socially since the separation. She looked different, radiant. She wore a stunning, tailored emerald green dress that complemented her silver hair, swept up elegantly. Her makeup was subtle but perfect. She held herself with a poise and quiet confidence that silenced the room. She didn't look like a wronged wife. She looked like a queen reclaiming her territory. On her lapel she wore a single, breathtaking corsage, a bloom from her own garden, an azalea hybrid of such intense, vibrant crimson it seemed to glow. Richard froze mid-sentence, microphone squealing with feedback, his face drained of color. Panic flared in his eyes. What was she doing here? What could she possibly say? Eleanor didn't approach the podium. She didn't need to. She simply walked, slowly, gracefully, towards the center of the room. All eyes followed her. She stopped near the table where the club president and his wife sat. She smiled warmly at them, then turned her gaze, calm and unwavering, towards Richard on the stage. She didn't speak a word. She didn't have to. Her presence was a thunderclap. The contrast was devastating. Him, sweating and flustered on stage, his carefully constructed world visibly crumbling. Her, serene, elegant, and undeniably strong, a living rebuke to his lies and betrayal. She wore the color of life, of resilience, while he stood exposed in the spotlight of his own failure. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Richard tried to stammer back into his speech, but the words died in his throat. He looked from Eleanor's steady gaze to the shocked faces of his peers. The club president stood up, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Ah, Richard, perhaps we should take a short break." He gestured helplessly. Richard stumbled off the podium, almost tripping on the steps. He fled the ballroom, not looking back, leaving his speech unfinished, the fundraising total unannounced, his dignity in tatters. The buzz of conversation erupted instantly, louder than before, focused entirely on Eleanor and Richard's spectacular downfall. Eleanor accepted a glass of champagne offered by a flustered waiter. She took a small sip, her gaze sweeping the room. She caught Carol's eye across the crowd. Carol gave her a tiny, triumphant nod. Eleanor allowed herself a small, serene smile. The sweetest revenge wasn't violence or screaming. It was standing tall, radiant in your own truth, while your betrayer's carefully crafted world imploded around him, witnessed by everyone he sought to impress. It was reclaiming your space, your dignity, and your future, petal by exquisite petal. Part 7. After the bloom. The fallout was swift and decisive. Within days, Richard Winthrop was quietly removed as chair of the Course Enhancement Fund. The club board, deeply embarrassed by the gala debacle and increasingly concerned about the financial irregularities Lydia Vance was hinting at, though the kickback scheme remained unproven, the stench was enough, pressured him to resign from several key committees. His social standing evaporated. Former golf buddies avoided him. The Magnolia Bluffs elite closed ranks, not around him, but against the scandal he represented. The divorce settlement, finalized 3 months later, was everything Eleanor could have hoped for. Lydia Vance secured her the house free and clear, a substantial lump sum representing half their assets, adjusted for his dissipation of marital funds on Monica. generous alimony reflecting her years of contribution to the marriage and her sacrificed earning potential, and even the vacation cottage. Richard was left financially diminished and publicly humiliated, a pariah in the community he'd prized above all else. Eleanor, however, was just beginning. She channeled part of her settlement into expanding her passion. She turned her sprawling backyard into a specialized azalea nursery, Eleanor's Enchanted Blooms. Carol helped her build a website and spread the word through the quirky quill. To everyone's surprise, except Carol's, it took off. Garden clubs from neighboring towns placed orders. Landscapers sought her unique hybrids. Her Crimson Victory azalea, the one she'd worn to the gala, became a sought-after variety. One crisp autumn morning, as Eleanor was carefully potting some new cuttings, a car pulled up her driveway. Not Carol's familiar hatchback, a sleek silver sedan. Monica Carlyle got out. Eleanor straightened up, wiping her hands on her gardening apron, her expression guarded. Monica looked different too, less polished, more real, nervous. She wore no fire engine red lipstick. "Eleanor," Monica began, her voice hesitant, I know I have no right to be here, but I needed to see you, to apologize, properly." Eleanor remained silent, waiting. Monica took a shaky breath. "Richard lied to me, extensively. He told me you had an understanding, that the marriage was over in everything but name, that you were cold, distant, only interested in your garden. He painted himself as neglected, trapped. He said you were financially set, that his money was his own." She looked down, shamefaced. "I was, flattered, lonely after my divorce. He showered me with attention, gifts. It felt like being seen again. I was stupid, gullible. I believed him." She met Eleanor's gaze, finding out the truth. About the money, about the lies he told about you. It was horrible. I ended it immediately, obviously. But the guilt, seeing what he put you through, knowing I was part of it. Monica's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. Truly. I had no idea. I was played just as much as you were, though I know that's no excuse." Eleanor studied her. The apology seemed genuine. The carefully constructed armor of the Riverbend Estates siren was gone, replaced by a woman humbled and remorseful. The rage Eleanor had felt towards Monica had cooled, replaced by a weary understanding. Richard had been the architect. Monica was another victim of his selfishness, albeit a more willing one initially. "Thank you for saying that, Monica," Eleanor said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "It doesn't erase the pain, but I believe you." He was very convincing when he wanted to be. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. He lied to everyone, including himself. Monica nodded, tears welling. "Yes, he did." She hesitated, then gestured towards the vibrant azaleas. "These are stunning, truly breathtaking." "Thank you," Eleanor said, a flicker of pride warming her. "They're my focus now, my fresh start." "I heard about your nursery. It's wonderful." Monica paused. I'm moving back to Atlanta next month, a clean break. But before I go..." She reached into her large handbag and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. "This is the money Richard spent on me. Everything I could trace back. The hotel stays, the dinners, the lingerie." She blushed. "It's not a fortune, but it's yours. It always was." Eleanor was stunned. She took the envelope. It felt heavy. "Monica, you didn't have to do this." "I did," Monica insisted. "For my own peace of mind, if nothing else. Please take it. Consider it." "Reparations, or an investment in your azaleas." She managed a small, sad smile. Eleanor nodded slowly. "All right, thank you." It was an unexpected grace note. Monica turned to leave, then stopped. "He's talking about moving. Somewhere cheaper. Arizona, maybe. He can't show his face here anymore." There was no satisfaction in her voice, just a statement of fact. "Good," Eleanor said simply. She watched Monica drive away. The envelope felt warm in her hand. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was a symbol of closure, of vindication. Monica, in her own way, had also enacted a small piece of revenge on Richard by returning the spoils. Epilogue. Deep Roots. A year later, Eleanor stood at the entrance to Eleanor's Enchanted Blooms, now a thriving small business with a charming little shop attached to her greenhouse. The sign swung gently in the spring breeze. Her crimson victory azaleas were in peak bloom, a riot of color framing the doorway. Inside, customers browsed, exclaiming over the vibrant plants. Carol, nominally helping but mostly chatting with everyone, manned the register. Eleanor breathed in the scent of damp earth and blossoms. Peace, hard-won and deeply satisfying, settled in her bones. She was busy, fulfilled, surrounded by beauty she'd created. Her children, initially shocked by the divorce but fiercely supportive once they learned the truth, visited often with her grandchildren, filling the big house with laughter again. Richard Winthrop III was a fading, bitter memory, like a stubborn weed finally eradicated. He'd moved to Florida, not Arizona, according to sporadic gossip Carol relayed. He played cheap public courses now. No one knew Monica Carlyle's whereabouts, and Eleanor wished her well. A woman approached, admiring a particularly striking azalea hybrid. "This color is extraordinary. What's it called?" Eleanor smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. She touched a velvety petal, a deep, complex magenta with streaks of gold. "This one, we call it Sweet Revenge." The woman laughed, delighted. "Perfect. I'll take 2. Eleanor carefully selected the healthiest plants. As she rang up the sale, she glanced out the window at her garden, ablaze with color. The lipstick stain, the betrayal, the pain. They were part of her history now, fertilizer for the strong, beautiful life that had grown in its place. The revenge had been served, cold, elegant, and devastatingly effective. It hadn't just punished Richard, it had liberated her. It had been the catalyst for discovering her own strength, her own worth, far beyond being Mrs. Richard Winthrop III. Her roots, once tangled in deceit and neglect, now ran deep in fertile ground of her own making. And above, bathed in sunlight, she bloomed, wildly, gloriously, and entirely for herself. The sweetest revenge, she thought, handing the customer her change with a warm smile, wasn't just in the downfall of the betrayer. It was in the triumphant, vibrant flourishing of the betrayed. Her story wasn't defined by Richard's infidelity. It was defined by her magnificent crimson victory. She was Eleanor Winthrop, and she was just beginning,